What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a video review of the Nerf Elite SurgeFire. This blaster in the Elite series is a pump-action, spring-powered blaster with a 15-round cylinder. Very similar to the Mega Roto Fury. Let's get into the review. Included is the blaster itself, the cylinder, which comes detached, a few darts, and the instructions. Installing the cylinder is super simple. You just slip it on in there. Now going over the externals of the blaster, starting up with the front. This is an in-strike blaster, but it does not have an in-strike attachment nozzle to add on new barrels. So you're stuck with that front form factor. Right here is the priming handle. This is a pump-action spring-powered blaster, so to prime, pull back, and then push forward. The prime weight is pretty standard, but it's not quite as smooth as other blasters on the market. I believe that's because of the heavier cylinder, which I'll go over in my opinion. I had an issue with the Nerf Roto Fury, which I mentioned in my review. When you prime this one back, occasionally you can catch your thumb on the front of the drum right here, and it's really kind of annoying because it hurts. You're smacking your hand into plastic if you start pumping hard. Super simple solution is just to get your thumb out of it and to just hold onto the front of the prime grip, but I complained about that and wanted more space in here. The SurgeFire blaster does have that extra space that I whined about for the Roto Fury. So when you prime this one, your thumb should not smack into this like plastic right here. Partially because of this little divot that they built into the foregrip so your hand can respectively push a little bit forward. And this gap right here is just a little bit larger. So that is the pump action system. Up top is a front sling mount and an in-strike tactical rail right here. Moving back is the rear sling mount to correspond again with the front, which brings me to the cylinder. This blaster holds 15 Nerf Elite darts, which is a pretty high capacity for a cylinder-fed blaster. The cylinder or drum itself does not pop out like in a strong arm. It is fixed, although it does rotate, of course, but it doesn't pop out of the blaster to load. It has the barrels exposed all the time. So to load, you can just slide in the darts like this. You can comfortably load 4 barrels on each side, so 8 total, before you have to rotate it, and then you manually rotate like that to get to the covered barrels. And again, that cylinder holds 15 rounds. Now to the back of the blaster. The pistol grip is a little bit smaller than the Elite Standard, or what you should expect from most Elite blasters, but it is comfortable. And the trigger pull is pretty normal. This blaster does have slam fire, meaning after you prime and the priming handle hits the forward position, the dart fires so you can go really fast with rate of fire. However, I experienced a number of skipping issues when firing in slam fire, trying to go fast. It just randomly skipped darts. Meaning out of 15, I would fire off about 11 or 12. It would skip quite a few. It doesn't happen every time you slam fire, so I'm not sure exactly what's causing it, but I think it's just the inertia of the cylinder because it's a heavier cylinder. I mean, it's 15 rounds with a lot of this plastic around the cylinder, so overall, there's a lot of weight there. So after it starts to rotate, the inertia, sometimes it just skips over and goes too far. It's interesting that this is very similar to the Nerf Mega Roto Fury, but pretty much like the Elite version, firing the smaller darts. But they changed up the cylinder design quite a bit here. If you look at the cylinder of the Roto Fury, the barrels are very close together, and the orange part, the actual moving part, is very thin plastic, making the mass or the weight of that unit pretty light. Compared to the SurgeFire, which has a lot of plastic around each barrel, so it's a heavier unit in general. And the darts are actually further apart. Like, I feel like they could have made this a 20-round cylinder for about the same diameter cylinder if they pushed the barrels closer together like in the Roto Fury. I'm surprised they didn't do that. And in the side view here, the SurgeFire has the cylinder exposed, and because this is a toy product, they have to make it robust enough to make sure you don't break it on accident. And the Roto Fury has thinner plastic, but it has this red shield that protects it from impact and stuff. Without that red shield, the barrel material, if you drop the blaster on the side, you could probably dent it and break it, and the Hasbro engineers knew that, so they covered it. And the solution to make this one just as strong is to just make this cylinder out of thicker plastic. But that extra plastic adds mass, so after it starts to get rotating, when you start slam firing, it skips sometimes, and that's kind of a bummer. So I'm a little surprised that they changed up the mechanical design. And the prime smoothness is also a little bit less smooth than the Roto Fury and a lot of other pump action blasters because of that extra weight. The mechanical system in place to rotate the cylinder there has to be more robust to rotate all of that mass, which results in extra energy input on the prime to get that to rotate, so it makes it less smooth. Probably just nerded out way too far for the casual nerfer, but that's my opinion on that. Let's move on, Franklin. Most people don't care. Finishing the overview in the back, there's also a priming indicator in the rear here, but this one is pretty tricky to read. So it's not in your face obvious whether or not it's primed. Is that a big deal? No, but it seems like a really easy fix. They could have just extended the piece of plastic in there to make it clearer. So not really sure why they did that. And also, this does not have a stock attachment point. You cannot put on your in-strike stocks. Mega blasters just don't ever have those things, so I get it why they didn't include that in the Roto Fury. But the Elite series is all about adding your tactical attachment, so I'm not sure why they didn't add that stock attachment point. It is most comfortable to shoot down low like a Tommy gun or from the hip like this instead of looking down the sights. But I'm all about the tactics, bro. I need more tactics, and the stocks are tactical. But that concludes my external overview. Again, operating the blaster is pretty straightforward. You front load in your 15 rounds and then you pump away and fire. Going like pew, 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 pew. Let's get to the firing demo. Starting with Nerf Elite darts in single fire mode, firing at my blaster board's target net. slam fire mode with a number of darts skipped. Slam fire again. And we fire them all off this time. Now firing some waffle head darts. Some skippages. So firing the SurgeFire is pretty fun when you don't skip darts. In single fire mode, I don't think I ever skipped any darts. And slam fire, when you operate pretty slowly, it works just fine. It's when you start pumping really fast, trying to just spew foam all over the place, which is what I'm all about, bros. That's when you experience a few skips. Now skipping, in my opinion, is better than jamming, because when you start spewing, every time you press the trigger or every time you like slam fire, a dart does fire. So it's not like you're gonna miss a shot, but the cylinder double rotates, so you're skipping a dart. So that 15 round capacity drops down to 15 minus whatever you skipped, like 11 or 12. So it doesn't always skip, but if you gotta go fast, like me, you're probably gonna skip quite a bit with the SurgeFire. I attribute those skips to the heavier cylinder, as I mentioned in the product overview, compared to something like the Roto Fury with a lighter weight cylinder. It's a 15 round capacity cylinder. That is a heavier plastic unit to be rotating around. So it makes sense that it skips, but I'm not sure why they didn't copy the Roto Fury mechanics. With the same diameter cylinder, they could have increased the capacity, perhaps up to something like 20. And what's more important than that is they could have increased the reliability of the slam firing, so it doesn't skip darts because it has a lighter weight cylinder. But I threw the SurgeFire up on my chronograph and I got an average of 74 feet per second. That is slightly over the 70 FPS par we can expect out of the Nerf Elite series. So performance is a little bit better than most Nerf blasters, which is good. So personal opinion on the Nerf Elite SurgeFire. Overall, I don't think it was executed as well as it should have been. That's because this blaster isn't really a slow firing blaster. You buy this blaster, I mean the ergonomics and the overall design are to run and gun. You fire it from the hip, you go fast, and you slam fire all the time. If you want to single fire or go a little slower, there are better options on the market. So if the primary buyer of the SurgeFire is buying it so they can slam fire and go super fast, because you gotta go fast, and it has skipping issues when you buy it for what you bought it for, it's kind of a bummer. However, there are advantages of having a cylinder-fed blaster of this capacity. Primarily, you can have a hot barrel primed, pointed at somebody like a Zambi, or trying to keep somebody behind a bunker while you're still loading, compared to a magazine-fed blaster where you pull out your magazine. If you have to reload that mag and you don't have a fresh one, you've effectively disabled your blaster until you reload it. But that skipping issue is a deal breaker for me. If you want to go slow and for some other reason you want to buy the SurgeFire, maybe it'll work out. Other than the skipping issue, I did not experience any jams or malfunctions. Everything else kind of worked. The pump action unit isn't as smooth as other blasters. I would have liked to see a stock attachment point. I mean, the priming indicator, I don't really use those anyways. Typically, I just... Okay, I primed. I remember now. Or the blaster like this, you can just try to prime it again, and with that lock enabled, you know you've already primed it because you can't reprime. But that indicator isn't clear enough that I would use it pretty much at all. Not really in line with how I approach the hobby. I prefer magazines and, I mean, definitely flywheels, but definitely magazines, so definitely not this style. And compared to magazine-fed blasters, this capacity just isn't high enough to compete with them. If they compress these barrels to get something like this to 20 or maybe 23 rounds in this package size, that would be a pretty functional blaster, of course, if it didn't skip. But 15 is just a little low to kind of be a primary like this. So overall, leaning towards the negative side on that opinion, but it's not really my taste, so even if they executed it really well, I still wouldn't be drawn to a blaster like this. But hopefully I provided all the objective information on the SurgeFire for you to make that purchase decision for yourself. If you're interested in buying one, I'll put a purchase link in the description box below. That concludes this video review. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.